Hello. Been a minute. Um, Quick little update. I've been busy as a one-arm paper hanger when it comes to work. Um, I have about an hour and 15-minute commute right now because of where I'm temporarily staying. So it means I'm tired a lot. Um, so that's that. Um, Meant to actually do this one yesterday. So happy May Day. I know it's a day late. Happy full moon. Um, as of the 21st of April, I had 2 years and 4 months of sobriety. So got a little over that now. Um, it's interesting. I actually worked with a couple of guys who are in recovery as well. So I'm kind of an unofficial sponsor when it comes to that. I'm always pouring into them and reaching out, giving advice, all these things. So, um, there's been a lot of content I've wanted to make. Unfortunately, I just haven't had the time or energy, and that's something I need to change. Because people make time for what's important to them. This is something that's important to me, so I need to make more time for it. But one of the things I wanted to talk to, uh, not to, but about today was the concept of letting go and what that means to me now as opposed to in the past. Most of my life, when I would hear the term about letting go, most people, we equate that to some negative experience, some painful experience. And myself, for a long time, like most people, I misconstrued letting go with um, absolution or forgiveness, or thinking that by doing so, I'm acknowledging that that particular behavior or whatever was okay. That's not what it means at all. I have since then learned um, through my own trials and tribulations, as well as through being exposed to a lot of other people's life events, good and bad. Letting go is literally just letting go of, not even necessarily letting go of the emotion, but letting go of the control that the emotion has on you, letting go of the resentment. Um, doesn't mean you have to forgive the person. It does not mean you have to accept that behavior. It means, okay, going forward in the future, no, you don't have to accept that particular behavior or whatever you were exposed to. But at the same time, if you continue to hold a resentment and or a grudge for the rest of your life, whatever event that was has an effect on you, and it has control over you, plain and simple. Um, but that's not just for bad things too; it's also for good things. And this was something I struggled with for a long time, because in my experience, one of the most people call it a secret. To me, it's very obvious now at this point. Now that I've brought it to the conscious, in order to be in the flow of life and to have abundance in your life in any area, doesn't matter. And I'm not just talking about financial, monetary stuff. That's a slightly different energy, a different form of abundance. But to have abundance as far as your peace, your serenity, love, kindness, generosity, all of these things that everyone says is important to them, but nobody ever focuses on. Kind of funny and ironic, actually. Um, Maybe because they don't actually give it to themselves. Hey, what do you know? But a lot of times there are things you have to let go of, both good and bad, in order to make room for new to come into your life. And what that means as far as like good things is, because no, we don't all have just bad memories, bad experiences. You have, that's the world we live in, relativity. You have both, and you don't know one without the other, and you don't know the in between without both. That's the third side of the coin. Point being is, um, we'll take relationships because everyone's had experience with those. We've all had bad ones, and we've all had good ones. Okay, and if you're in a good one, hopefully you're still in it, and that's great, wonderful. But there are a lot of us, myself included, who've had some wonderful relationships that I'm no longer in due to all kinds of different reasons. Um, Most of the time, self sabotage. Anyway, somebody asked me recently about somebody from my past and whether or not I was essentially hopeful if me and this person could ever rekindle it. And while I can sit here and speculate all day long and say, well, yeah, of course there's a part of me that wishes and or hopes for that, as we all do. But the reality is this: me and this person haven't been in contact in over 3 years. I have no idea who that person is. You know? And what I've held on to is an idea of what we used to be. Now, I know I've changed quite a bit in the last 3+ years. I can only assume, and maybe that's wrong on my part, that that person has as well. They may not have. So the reality is, I don't even know who that person is anymore. And what I've held on to is this idealized version of that particular person and what we had. That's not to say that something better could be made in the future. Of course it could, you know. Um, and this is what I mean by, I oftentimes I try not to speak on things unless I have experience with it, and I've talked in other videos about how a lot of times in relationships, not just romantic, friendships, business, all kinds, we fall in love with the potential instead of the reality. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, just the problem is it leads to certain expectations. When those expectations aren't met, we have disappointments, which can lead to resentments. Because I'm 100% guilty of this, and most people are as well. When somebody doesn't meet our expectations, we automatically filter their actions or lack thereof through our own experiences and our own perceptions. That's just how we relate as humans. And unfortunately, depending upon where your self-worth and self-esteem is, will determine how badly or how well those presumed motivations are. Most people, in my experience, have a very negative outlook on their self-worth and their assumptions as to why somebody may or may not reciprocate in a particular fashion. My personal experience, 9 times out of 10, when somebody doesn't reciprocate to a certain expectation that you have, first of all, you shouldn't have had the expectation, number one. And when I say expectation, I mean in the aspect of you're expecting things to come back to you in a certain way or a certain fashion, or this person to behave in a particular way, or to even to recognize a behavior or emotion in you that you may or may not have shown them. People expect other people to be able to read minds. Yeah, well, there's a little problem with that. First of all, not many people can do it and or are very good at it, number one. Number two, you have to be open enough to be read. There's a little clause in there. A lot of people miss that step. Um, the point being is, let me get back to it before I get too segued, letting go. So, we all have these ideas in our head. We all have these fantasies, these romanticized, and even the bad experience, romanticized fantasies about why people behave certain ways and why things happen the way they do, and so forth and so on. And the funny part about it is, when you really start to break things down and you start to ask the why question, and you go more than 1 or 2 layers deep, and you really dig down to the causes and conditions, 99 times, not 100, but I'm going to, nine times out of 10, we'll say, you had a much greater part to play in that event and or situation than what most people will ever admit. And they don't realize it because a lot of it's subconscious. And that's what the subconscious means. It's below the conscious. It's, you know. But so letting go, and I see people struggle with this all the time. Oh, I don't want to let it go. I have every right to be mad and hurt, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, you do. Here we are a couple of years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later. You're still allowing something that happened to you that long ago to have that kind of effect and control over your emotional state, which directly affects your perceived reality. Hello. I mean, is it just me, or is that like, and I'm guilty of it. I spent most of my life in a very fearful victim mentality, a lack mentality, expecting, hoping, wanting for the people and things that hurt me or that I perceived hurt me to heal me. It's not how it works. Rarely does it work like that. The real power lies in learning how to heal yourself so that you no longer end up either in those situations, or if the same situation arises again, aka karmic cycle, you're in a much better healed and aware position so that that cycle can no longer affect you that way. And that's pretty much the whole purpose of it. You're here experiencing life and the human condition and the human experience for basically one reason: to experience it, the good and the bad, and to remember that you really are part of the divine. You are part of source, and you can control your reality. No, I'm not talking about, parlor tricks and illusions where, okay, I'm going to magically pull a rabbit out of my ass. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that your emotional state, and how you are internally will reflect in your reality. The things you see and the things you notice and the things you perceive are a direct reflection of what goes on in here and in here. That's what it means by you make and create your own reality. Doesn't mean if you sit there and wish hard enough, a car is going to magically appear in your driveway. No. But if that vehicle is important to you, guess what? You will start to rearrange your entire existence into getting that vehicle, into making it happen. And it'll be all kinds of subtle little things. It'll be an attitude change at work so that you start getting more hours in overtime. It'll be being grateful for the job you have and being happy and willing to go in and do it to make the money to get the car. That's how manifestation works. It's not a form of instant gratification. Not usually. On occasion it can be, but pretty rare. It's about rearranging your perception of the physical reality so that you behave and act differently and align with your goals. And why is letting go such an important part of that? Because if you constantly have all this emotional crap from the past, both good and bad, And you're always going back to that, and you're always reinforcing those same ideologies and that same way of thinking, that same emotional state over and over. And the same 20 things that you've been reacting to for the last 20 years over and over again, guess what? You're never going to be able to realign and readjust yourself to the reality that you want. And you will constantly just end up in this cycle, what I call victim mentality or lack mentality. You will start to resent that you're working that hard. You will start to resent that you never have enough money. Why? Because you're always thinking you don't. All in the mind. But that goes for the good things too. You know, if you're always reliving these wonderful memories, and those are great. And when I say reliving, I mean literally re-experiencing that same emotional state. And while you should have a memory of those, just like you have memories of bad things, okay? We all know what a hot stove feels like. Even though our mothers said, don't touch it, at some point one of us said, oh, okay. You know, we all have that memory. But the difference is this. You've learned to let go of that initial shock and that hurt and that pain and that almost betrayal. Why did my mother pull my hand away? Well, she told you. Once again, self-sabotage. Oops, I got burned. No shit. Well, now you know. Okay. And it really is like that. Expound it from simple things of, okay, don't touch the hot stove that your mother told you not to touch 5 times. And you do it anyway because, like most of us, we got to learn the hard way. You know, school of hard knocks. God, I wish I could become tax exempt for being a 100% professional fucking student of the school of hard knocks, right? Okay, just expound it into other areas of your life. It's the same behavior. Unfortunately, that's part of the human condition and the human experience. We have to experience things in order for knowledge is power, yes, but it doesn't become wisdom until that knowledge is coupled with experience. That's the key. That's, like I said, the whole point of life is to experience it. You're supposed to experience the highs and the lows. Learn from them, keep the memories, cherish some of them, both the good and bad, because if you didn't cherish the bad, you'd repeat the same mistakes over and over. You'd be continuing to burn your hand every single day. You'd continue to eat the poisonous mushroom and none of us would be here. You know, in the good, same thing. That's how you're going to recognize a good, healthy relationship in the future. Oh, well, this is similar to the good, healthy one I had back then. The point is, you're not reliving it in the past, in the memory. Reliving that or re-experiencing that emotional state over and over is what's called dwelling. You know, there's a book out there that's common in the 12-step areas. It's called Drop the Rock. And that's what it means. That's what it means to let go. You don't have to give 100%, forgiveness if you're unwilling to, even though that's really for you and not them. That's the other thing. People misconstrue that. People think forgiveness means that, you're letting that person know that their behavior was okay. No, it's not. It's giving them grace. It's no different than if you punish your child or your pets. Anyway, stop living in the past. And that's not to say that you can't revisit the past, and that's not to say the past can't revisit you. Of course it can. And I know that sounds contradictory. The difference is when and if it does come back around, recognize that you may have changed and that you may not look at it the same anymore. And that's okay. You shouldn't. Otherwise, you're just literally repeating exactly what happened before. You should change. You should grow. You should evolve so that when it does come back around, you now have the opportunity to have a whole new experience with that person, place, or thing from the past. Because you've let go of the old romanticized version of the emotion that you had with it. And therefore, you now have room to have a new experience. You can only carry so much emotion in the body. And when you get too much, guess what? It's going to start making you physically sick. You gotta let it flow. Happy full moon. Yeah, I'm gonna try to. Yeah, I'm gonna try to make more. All right, everyone have a blessed day.